Thank you all very much for attending. Today I'm going to be talking about my little research project that I carried out in the context of this class, which is on complement clauses in Gorwaa again, which is the same topic that I worked on when I participated last year. Yeah, so I decided to look a bit more into it because there was a lot more to to still uncover. And as a little spoiler, I'm not really any closer to having any big conclusions. But I'll share some interesting data anyway. So first, I'll give a little bit of theoretical context. So I'm doing this in the context of my my PhD project, which is within a mostly theoretically oriented project. Um, and so the context that I'm doing this research is in the context of a pretty prominent hypothesis within theoretical syntax and semantics, which argues that complement clauses are predicates to nouns. So for example, Angelika Kratzer has argued, and many people before her have done the same thing actually, that if you have a complement clause, like he believes that Ortkut is a spy, then there is a sort of silent noun thing there that the complement clause modifies. So he believes a thing, and the thing is that Ortkut is a spy. And so this is the focus of the project that I'm working in. And within this context, Gorwaa is actually very interesting because their complement clauses in Gorwaa contain a noun, an overt noun, which is gidaba. And we see an example here. So grandmother believes that the boy has stolen the money. That would be amaya and gidaba, garmala pianga fees. And this gidaba can also occur as a noun, which means something like sense, meaning, or a reason. And this example here is from Iraq, which is closely related, but in Gorwaa, it can be used as a noun as well, meaning reason or meaning. So what I've been trying to investigate in the context of this course, as well as in the course last year, was well, what is really the function of this gidaba? Does it have a semantic contribution to the clause? And also, what can it tell us about the kind of syntactic structure of complement clauses? And what I was mostly looking at in this year was the co-occurrence of gidaba with other nouns. And so I have a few interesting things to report on today, but no real big conclusions to draw from them yet. But so one of the things is that gidaba can be preceded by another noun, which is umo. Then another thing is that gidaba turns out can co-occur with overt content nouns like claim or story, etc. And another thing that I briefly looked into is extraction, or in this case, relativization, out of a complement clause with gidaba. And so we'll just go through some data on those topics. So as a little overview, gidaba in Gorwaa can be used in pretty much any type of finite complement clause. This is something that I looked into last year, and it doesn't seem like there are major restrictions on the type of predicates that embeds the complement clause. So for example, here we have an example with believe. Grandmother believes that the boy has stolen the money, and you kind of gidaba there. And another example is below with the verb fititin, which is to regret. And in both cases, gidaba is possible, and also generally seems to be optional. And yeah, so one time actually I got a judgment from Hezekiah where he said that with the verb regret, the gidaba is actually obligatory. But then later I also got a sentence from him with fitlim without gidaba. So it doesn't seem like there is any very strong restrictions on whether gidaba can occur or cannot occur in a complement clause that that depending on the matrix verb. So then one of the things that I tried to look into this year was a phenomenon where gidaba is preceded by another noun, namely umo. And we see an example here. So if you have the boy believes that dogs can talk, we can see that you can phrase that with just gidaba. But then another option is to have gidaba preceded by umo. And the questions that arose at this point is, well, one, what is the syntactic status of the umo? Like, what is it? And also, what is the function? Does it contribute anything to the meaning of the complement clause? So in terms of what it is, it looks like the linker form of the noun uma, which means name. So the linker or construct state basically is a special form of the noun which you get in certain syntactic configurations. For example, if the noun is followed by a modifier. So you have an example here from Andrew's data. His name is Elder Bull. We see the same meaning name there. So, and furthermore, umo is also used as a universal quantifier, interestingly. So every year you would say as umokuru. And so yes, and as we just saw, it can also occur in complement clauses. So generally, what I found was that any kinds of complement clause that can have gidaba is also possible with umo preceding gidaba. So, and this is true for both non-factive predicates like believe, where the content of the complement clause is not presupposed to be true, but also with factive predicates like victim, like regret. So if you regret something, that presupposes that the thing that you regret is true. But yes, as we see here, we saw the previous example with believe, and here another example with regret, and both are possible. However, one thing that I did find is that Hezekiah changed the tense in the sentence with umogidaba, and I'm not really sure what the difference, what that means. So the one with gidaba, we have perfect, and in the one without gidaba, we see an imperfect past tense, and I'm not sure what to make of that. So then, yeah, the question is then, what is the difference in meaning between having umo or not having it? Oh wait, first, another observation is that a complement clause can only have umo if there's also a gidaba. So you cannot have a complement clause introduced just by umo. So as you can see, in a sense, like she said that it will rain, that can or cannot have gidaba in it. But then if you introduce umo, then gidaba is obligatory. It cannot be left out. So you can have nothing or gidaba or umo gidaba, but not just umo. So then the question is, what is the function of this umo? And one hypothesis that I try to pursue is based on the first time that Hezekiah gave me a sentence with umo gidaba as a first translation, and that was this one. It is bad that he stole the money. So my hypothesis was that umo gidaba is used when the content of the complement clause is given or already known information. Because in a sentence like this, it is bad that he stole the money. Usually you would utter a sentence like that in a context where it is already known that he stole the money and you're giving a judgment about it. Yeah, so this is something that's difficult to test in elicitation, of course. But there's also a few examples from natural language, which is from Andrew's text corpus that seem to support this as well. And one example, for example, is this one where this, and wasn't I told in the dream, Umo gidaba birimo ni harda, that a little biriri bird would arrive. And this is like uh, kind of talking about something that was already earlier discussed in the story. However, not all examples are as clear as this. There's also a lot of examples where it's not really obvious that there's such a like that the information is already given. And yeah, so as I said, in elicitation, I didn't really find any difference. So it appears that basically for every clause with gidaba, there's like the version with umo is also possible. And Hezekiah didn't provide any, they didn't feel like there was a difference in meaning between them. So if there is a difference, it's likely to be very subtle. And so if it depends on the wider discourse context, like my hypothesis was, it's difficult to investigate through elicitation, and more research on natural language texts would be needed. Okay, so then one other topic that I looked into was the co-occurrence of Gidaba and the so-called content nouns. So content nouns are nouns like claim, fact, or story that can be modified by a complement clause, right? You can say the claim that he stole the money, or the fact that. And if this hypothesis that is posed by, for example, by Kratzer and also by others, that complement clauses are predicates, if that is true, then we might expect a noun like gidaba not to co-occur with content nouns, because the idea is that a noun, like these kind of light nouns like thing, kind of take the place of a content noun in constructions where the complement clause seems to just be the complement of a verb. So yeah, so the idea is that in the rumor that Ortcut is a spy, the complement clause modifies the noun rumor, and in he believes that Ortcut is a spy, it modifies the silent noun thing. So if Gidaba is the kind of overt equivalent of this kind of noun in Gorwaa, we might expect them not to occur with the content nouns. And however, this is not true. So it seems that in Gorwaa, the Gidaba can actually co-occur with content nouns. So yeah, we have an example. I don't believe the claim that he left. I don't believe Neita Gidaba Ajay. There we see that Gidaba can co-occur with the noun claim. And example here with the noun fact or truth, where in this case it means more like fact. So the fact that he stole the money, we can see that Gidaba can also co-occur with this. And this seems to imply that this kind of structure that was proposed doesn't really work for Gorwaa. And it also seems to imply that the Gidaba is not just like a placeholder noun for the complement clause to modify if it's a predicate, but rather it is there for some other reason. So that's then the question: does it contribute anything to the meaning of the complement clause? And again, I don't know. So the elicitation didn't really allow me to draw any conclusions about that, about difference in meaning between clauses with Gidaba or clauses without Gidaba. Yeah. Then one final topic that I looked into is extraction, specifically long distance relativization. So this is like a very well researched topic in theoretical syntax. And so it concerns sentences like, what do you think that he bought? Or the thing I think he bought, these kind of sentences, where the idea is in generative syntax generally is that these kinds of sentences are derived through what used to be called movement. In any case, there is some sort of dependency between the phrase what or the thing at the start and like a gap further down in the clause. And what we see is that in English and many other European languages, there are restrictions on extraction processes like this. So, for example, in English and other European languages, you can extract out of a complement clause to certain verbs, specifically what is called bridge verbs, such as believe or say or think. So you can say, what do you believe that he bought? It's fine. However, extraction is generally not possible out of a complement clause to a noun. So you can't say, what do you believe the rumor that he bought? This generally not acceptable in English. And another thing is there's a difference between verbs like believe on one hand and verbs like regret on the other. So what do you regret that he bought is generally worse than what do you believe he bought. So this could be so the reason why I decided to look into this, it could be a useful diagnostic for the syntactic status of the different types of complement clause in Gorwaa. So maybe there's a difference between extraction from just a clause with just gidaba versus a noun complement clause without gidaba. However, what I found is that Gorwaa is quite liberal in terms of allowing extraction. So it seems that it's possible to make these kinds of sentences even in cases where English and other European languages do not allow for it. So an example here is so the way that Gorwaa forms the content questions is through like pseudo-clefts. So you have a relative clause here, and then you have the copular kind of construction following it. So if you want to say, who do you think has left, you would say the person you think has left is who. And we see that this is entirely possible with a complement clause with gidaba. So the person that you think gidaba has left is who. And it turns out that it's also possible, although it with some difficulty, to extract from a complement clause with a content noun, so like claim. So basically, what do you believe the claim that the boy stole, which not actually very good in English, was accepted by Hezekiah in Gorwaa. So the thing that you believe is what, and then the whole complement clause seems to be extraposed to the right, the claim that the boy stole. And another example that I didn't put in the slide here, but that it's also possible with a verb like regret, which in English does not generally allow for extraction, or at least it's degraded. And what the takeaway from this is that we should be careful when assuming that these kinds of tests that are commonly used for European languages also work for languages, other languages in other parts of the world. And well, there's a lot more research needed into this to draw conclusions, I think. But yeah, so this was not immediately helpful to me as a diagnostic. So then, yeah, so then the takeaways, as we've seen, complement clauses in Gorwaa contain an overt noun, and maybe even two. And this seems to support, on the one hand, the hypothesis that complement clauses are predicates to nouns. However, there's also a lot that is still unclear. For one, what is really the contribution of gidaba? Why is it there? So are there differences in meaning or syntactic properties between complement clauses with and without gidaba? Another question is, what is this umo doing there? What is its function? And then another question is, what do we do with these extraction data? And I have actually, I have some more data that I couldn't fit in the presentation on this, but it seems to be quite complicated. But the question is, how do we account for it, and how do we explain that some languages do allow for this, and other languages like the European languages we saw do not. Yeah, so in summary, I found some interesting data, but unfortunately, can't draw any major conclusions from them yet. But plenty of opportunities for future research. So thank you very much, especially thanks to Hezekiah and Stefano, of course, for sharing their languages, and to Andrew for organizing the course. So thank you.
Thank you, Melle, for that another characteristically rich and interesting presentation. I'm interested, so I'm going to ask you, I've two questions. If one is probably relatively easy, and the other one I don't know if it is a comfortable answer or not. But the first one is, if you had another chunk of time with Hezekiah, if you had another like sitting with Hezekiah, what would be sort of the first set of questions that you'd be interested in asking him? The second question is, how does this Gorwaa data then feed into the images project?
Yeah, good question. So if I had some more time, yeah, I think there are some things that I really want to know more about, but I feel like what would be quite difficult um, to investigate in this format of it, like the online elicitation.
So maybe I should unconstrain
Mm-hmm.
that question and say, okay, well, if you had to like continue the investigation, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so we move from beyond the elicitation with Hezekiah, what would like what are in your mind, like what are sort of
Mm-hmm.
ideal next steps?
Yeah. On the one hand, I want to get some know more about this extraction data. I think this is quite interesting, but I think what is the most relevant to figure out would be actually to really try to like know what the function of the Gidaba is, and Umo Gidaba, and what the difference there is. I think that would be the most immediately pressing issue. So try and maybe, yeah, try to um, yeah, maybe do a better like job at like, presenting some scenarios or context, and try to figure out if there are like differences between Umo Gidaba and just Gidaba and no Gidaba that depend on the wider discourse context.
So I'm hearing like coming up with perhaps prompts, but also like I know that you made use of some of the stuff that was written in the database as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, can that take you much further, or in terms of like the stuff that you encountered there, is that kind of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the database stuff is going to help that much more. There's some yeah, it, there's some interesting stuff there that could help to kind of um like, nudge, give a nudge in the right direction, but not enough to really draw strong conclusions from. I think some very rigorous elicitation would be necessary to do that. Yeah. And then as for your second question, what is the relevance for the Image project? That's a great question. So within this Image project, it's kind of a number of people who have worked on similar things that are related to this idea of, there's a noun somewhere in the complement clause, kind of, have kind of come together and tried to approach this from different sides, and hopefully meet in the middle on something that we can all agree on. I think having a language like Gorwaa, which has an overt noun, which means something that's similar to a thing uh, in these clauses, is definitely very relevant. Um, in the sense that this is something that European languages generally don't do. Um, and it is a very relevant um, data point in that regard, because you can kind of propose silent nouns if you can't see them, and just kind of assume that they have any kinds of properties that you would like to make it fit the theory or the semantic kind of formula that you made for it. But then it's another thing to actually look at a language which shows it, and where you can test the various properties that it has. So in that sense, I think Gorwaa and other languages which have nouns like this can be a very useful test case to see if how much merit these kinds of theories actually have. It's kind of how I'm looking at it right now. But based on what I've found so far, well, it's clear that I need to get some more data, which is also reason why I'm like planning to do a short field trip again to Tanzania to do some work on, well, it will be on Iraq probably rather than Gorwaa, but well, Iraq is very similar.
Either a huge step forward either way.
Yeah. Although Iraq doesn't have umo, I think, in complement clauses or umu. Yeah, I've asked Basilisa and she said she'd never, yeah, it wasn't the thing. So,
Well, this is a good segue. First of all,
yeah,
Mela, thank you for your answer. But I see that Martin has his hand up,
yes,
so let's give him.
please.
Yeah. Um, so I learned a lot, and of course this UMO is tantalizing to me
Mm-hmm.
because of the every, and so don't forget that it also goes from name to every whenever you try to find the meaning,
Mm-hmm.
the semantic function in the complementizers. I saw just now when you were talking about Gorwaa, Iraq, and then for both, I mean, Kidaba is a Datoga loan. So
Yeah, true.
uh, I wonder on the one hand, how does Alakma do it? I don't know. My grammar is too sketchy. And I also have no idea whether it's used at all as a complementizer in Datoga. And I think it would be interesting to see the sort of small scale variation that what people are trying out with this Gidaba would give you maybe also indication on the structural level. But I have a
Mm-hmm.
question on your last impossible sentence. It's possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this
Which
one.
one? This one, yeah.
Do you believe the claim that the boy stole? Um,
Yeah.
so here we see, first of all, is there a prosodic break between the Mela and Neta?
That's a good question. I don't think so, but I would have to listen back to the recording to be sure.
Because we have, I mean, one thing in way in which Goro and Iraqu are different from the languages that I'm used to is that this question formation is really a sentence in itself, no?
Mm-hmm.
And you will always have to do that. You have to get something out of it and then make the head of the relative clause. Um, so maybe maybe that is that the structure of the question formation is also linked to the extraction possibilities, because maybe in a way to speakers you're not extracting. You're, especially for this last one, you're just
Mm-hmm.
giving an afterthought.
Yes. So this is something that I've been considering as well. So I I think it could be quite likely that this in these sentences here we don't actually have the same kind of extraction as you would have in English. So one major difference between Gorwaa and English is that in Gorwaa the object is cross-referenced on the selector or represented by a pronoun. Although actually in this example here it's not, which is interesting.
No, it's object relative clauses.
Yeah, in object relative clauses it's not. It's true.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I had some other examples that I listed before, and for Iraq as well, where if you have, let me, yeah, if you have long distance object relative clause, then you don't get the object pronoun in the main clause, but you do get one in the embedded clause. So that's what originally made me think that there's probably something else going on, because in English you can obviously say like things like about what do you believe the claim that the boy stole it, something like that. I think that is, well, it's a little weird, but these kinds of formations are definitely should be grammatical, I think. So that made me think that.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this last sentence, I guess you cannot put the amela at the very end.
Garta, yeah. And well, that's a good question. I think I originally I tried to have the amila at the end, but then Hezekiah kind of corrected it and put the amila like before that, so to have the whole complement clause at the very end.
Which he didn't do in the first sentence there.
No. Well, I also have examples. I have Hezekiah is someone who gives lots of different varieties or like different ways to say something. So I'll certainly also have examples where the ama would be in the middle, probably.
Yeah.
But it's
No
not
problem with that.
yeah. But for this one, for the lower one, it definitely seems like there was a preference to read it like this.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, another one is that also another variant of this that he gave was to have netawo, so to have well, yeah, you know what it is, the
Whatever
primitive
that
proper.
is.
Yeah.
You guessed my next question that I didn't dare to ask.
Yeah. But he said that both neta and netawo are possible.
That makes it a kind of background. Yeah. And
Yeah.
What do you believe, given that in the situation that?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, well, there's a lot more to go into when it comes to this. Also, like I have some examples where it's not a relative clause, but you have the M on the selector for what, right? And there it seems like the options were actually more restricted, even also in terms of which main clause predicates were felicitous in that context. But I don't know if we have time to go into that now, because I feel like
I'll see you soon.
Yes, exactly. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Melle, for another classic, brilliant presentation, and for all the back and forth.